The Las Vegas Raiders had another disappointing season last season, but will this season be the turn of the tide? Let's get into it. The Raiders this past offseason moved on from longtime starting quarterback Derek Carr, who is now in New Orleans, and went out and signed Jimmy Garoppolo. Jimmy Garoppolo reunites with Josh McDaniels, who was his offensive coordinator when he was in New England. And so he knows the system and knows the offense and knows how Josh McDaniels likes his offense ran. Jimmy Garoppolo has been a winner. He was a winner in San Francisco, and he was drafted to a winning organization in New England. While Jimmy Garoppolo does not possess your prototypical arm strength, he is a very smart quarterback and a very accurate quarterback. The problem with Jimmy G is it always comes down to his injuries. Every season, it seems at the worst opportune times, he gets an injury. Will this be more of the same this year? Or will luck finally turn for not just him, but this Raiders organization? And it's not like the Raiders don't have good players. They have a very good quality starting running back in Josh Jacobs, who had a career year last season, but was not able to come to a long-term agreement and is not reporting to training camp and refuses to sign the franchise tag. We'll see if the Raiders can come to a conclusion. I doubt Josh Jacobs sits out this whole season. We'll see if Josh Jacobs reports for Week 1, or if he's even in Las Vegas as a Raider in Week 1. And there's a lot of question marks on that running back field behind Josh Jacobs. You have young, talented Zamir White, but behind him, you have veteran journeyman Amir Abdullah and former Patriot Brandon Bolden. In that receiver room, though, you still have franchise star receiver Davante Adams. After a long offseason of speculation if he wanted to continue to be a Raider after the Derek Carr fiasco, Davante Adams is in training camp and ready to continue to be a Las Vegas Raider. That's not where the talent or the production stops for the Raiders receiving group, as they have one of the best slot receivers in the league in Hunter Renfrow. They also went out and signed Jacoby Myers from the Patriots. And they also drafted Trey Tucker out of the University of Cincinnati, who has a background in track, to add a little bit of more speed to this offense. And they also drafted dual tight end out of Notre Dame, Michael Mayer, who can line up at tight end and line up out at receiver, and is also a really good run blocker. And they also went out and signed veteran tight ends in Austin Hooper and O.J. Howard. Austin Hooper is not once what he once was, but he's still a very quality backup tight end, and O.J. Howard at this point in his career is more of a blocking tight end, but that fits the Josh McDaniels offense. The Raiders have a good argument on having the best edge rush duo in the league, and Chandler Jones and Max Crosby. Chandler Jones, I think, is one of the more underrated edge rushers in history, as he was named to the All-Decade NFL team, and not a lot of people bring his name up when talking edge rushers, but you should. He has done it for a long time and has done it at a high level for a long time. Then you have Max Crosby, who's really come on of late. Everyone knows his story of battling addiction and fighting back and signing that huge extension he did, and just major props to him for turning his life around. But more on the football field, Max Crosby, is just a menace. Full on, go get the quarterback, do what it takes to win. But the Raiders have not done a lot of winning lately, but it's not because of these two guys. The Raiders did go out and sign Marcus Epps, who's been one more of the quality guys from the Philadelphia Eagles. Not a lot of people talk about him because he's not a big name, but he's a very quality player, and I think he'll help the back end of this Raiders defense. The Raiders have a very young secondary, so they recently went out and signed long-term veteran cornerback Marcus Peters. But you do have to wonder at this point in Marcus Peters' career how much production he's going to give you on the field, as he's had some up and downs the last couple of seasons. But I think this is more so of a signing as what he will do on the field as what he will do in that locker room for those young guys, and just a veteran leadership and someone that the young guys can talk to and count on, to someone that has seen everything that the league has thrown at him and has seen everything that the league can potentially throw at you. And the Raiders went defense heavy in this draft, starting off with their first-round pick, Tyree Wilson out of Texas Tech, and edge, who will help Max Crosby and Chandler Jones in that edge room and provide some very much-needed edge depth. And the Raiders also took Byron Young out of Alabama, a defensive tackle in the 3rd round, to help shore up that inside defensive line. As just much as just helping up that defensive line as possible, as the Raiders needed some much-needed defensive help. And Byron Young and Tyree Wilson are both battling some injuries right now, so hopefully it's not too serious both for them and for this Raiders team. They also took Jack O'Ryan Bennett, a cornerback out of Maryland, in the 4th round. And one of those young corners I was talking about that Marcus Peters can help mentor and help push to get to that next level. There's a Christopher Smith, a safety out of Georgia, and a Murray Burney, a linebacker out of Florida. So it was real key the Raiders playing this offseason was not to just get talent on this football team, but a heavy emphasis on to get some young talent on that defensive side of the ball that can help grow and be the next force and the next great winning players in the next era for this Las Vegas Raiders franchise. And when you're talking Raiders, you got to talk about head coach Josh McDaniels, who's Track record as a head coach is not great going back to his stint in Denver. While yes, when he was super young, it seems like not much has changed since taking over. You can't argue McDaniels as an offensive coordinator is one of the better minds in the business, but as a head coach has just made some questionable decisions. It's kind of like in my last video with Brandon Staley that I talked about. There's just some decisions where it's either being aggressive or reckless, and it just seems like with the consequences and the responsibility that comes with being a head coach, Josh McDaniels at times just can't handle, and it seems like he's more preferred and better suited for that offensive coordinator role. It's hard to argue that the Raiders didn't add talent this past offseason, but you're relying on a lot of young and experienced guys on that defensive side of the ball. And then a tough AFC and an even tougher AFC West, where you have to deal with Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs, Sean Payton and the Russell Wilson-led Broncos, and the Justin Herbert Chargers. It's hard to see the Raiders doing anything better than what they did last year. So a potential playoff berth is going to be hard for this team, but they're definitely building to that next step. They just got to figure out, is Josh McDaniels their head coach of the future? As always, thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe, and let me know down in the comments, how long do you think the Raiders are back in postseason play?